Ukraine has put up a staunch fight against the invasion launched by its bigger and more powerful neighbor Russia, but things appear to be going horribly wrong for it as the war's third anniversary approaches. Kyiv's relationship with the United States, its biggest military backer since the start of the war in February 24, 2022, has gone rapidly downhill since President Donald Trump's inauguration. As things stand, the prospect of more U.S. military aid looks dead in the water, and the likelihood is increasing that a bad peace deal could be foisted on Ukraine in which it's forced to concede territory to Russia. Even the prospect of U.S. support when it comes to a future peacekeeping mission looks unlikely, making Ukraine look isolated and at sea after 3 long and bloody years of fighting back against Russia. The first U.S.-Russia ceasefire talks, this week, on Ukraine offered little cause for optimism for Kyiv, Andrius Tersa, Central and Eastern Europe advisor at risk consultancy Teneo, said in a note Thursday. Washington has signaled willingness to consider several Russian demands that undermine Ukraine's long-term security, while the bilateral format and thawing U.S.-Russia ties raise concerns about a ceasefire deal that may be highly unfavorable for Ukraine. Trump's criticism towards Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is driving anti-American sentiment in Ukraine and heating up transatlantic tensions, he said in emailed comments. Tensions came to a head this week as U.S. officials re-established relations with their Russian counterparts, excluding Ukraine from preliminary talks laying the groundwork for peace. Then the already tense relationship between Trump and Zelenskyy went from bad to worse on Wednesday as the latter described the U.S. president as living in a Russian disinformation bubble. Trump hit back, describing Ukraine's wartime leader was a dictator without elections, referring to the absence of a democratic vote in Ukraine since 2019. Ukraine says it's impracticable to hold elections during a time of martial law and war. U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, continued his visit to Kyiv on Thursday, but there were already doubts over the value of the meeting, with Kellogg absent from the high-profile talks held between Russian and U.S. officials in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, earlier in the week. Ukraine said Kellogg cancelled a press conference that was due to take place after the meeting. Relations between the U.S., Europe and Ukraine took an unexpected turn last week, with Trump leaving allies on the continent dumbfounded when he announced he had spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin and that the leaders had agreed to talks. Trump said he had then informed Zelenskyy of the situation. Close followers of developments in the war and geopolitical relations between the U.S. and its erstwhile allies were critical of Washington's approach, saying the U.S. had made too many concessions to Russia before talks had even begun by taking the potential leverage of Ukrainian NATO membership off the table. Trump has conceded upfront and ahead of any talks with Ukraine what could have been part of a more balanced deal in the end, Holger Schmieding, chief economist at Berenberg Bank, said in a note Thursday. For all that is publicly known, Russia has not made any concessions in return. This can only embolden Russia to push for more. To add insult to injury, Trump has questioned the legitimacy of democratically elected Zelenskyy and blamed Ukraine for not giving in to Putin's maximalist demands years ago, he said, adding that Trump seems to have endorsed almost the entire false Russian narrative about the worst war in Europe since 1945.